Hey everybody, welcome to week 2 of the course. We're going to talk about the public opinion industry and the place of public opinion in our political system this week. I'm here in my garage again instead of in front of the blank board that I was in for the first week, which was in a conference room on the PSU campus. And I just want to quickly introduce this week's lectures and this first lecture because I'm going to do things a little differently this week. This week, instead of having notes over my shoulder and watching me standing in front of a board, I'm going to do audio lectures where I'm going to read into a microphone. Not read, I don't have a pre-written script, I'm just going to lecture into a microphone, and you're going to be able to, on the video, watch just essentially the static screen. If you want to do the audio only, it's an MP3 file, put it on your phone, listen to it while you walk or drive. And then just look at, you can even print out the one-page note for each of the short lectures. That's going to be a good way to do it as well. I don't know if I'm going to do this same thing for week 3 or what week 3 is going to look like, but for this week I'm going to experiment with audio-only lectures. So I'm here to introduce the first lecture. This first lecture is actually an excerpted and lightly edited lecture that I delivered to a class live in winter term, and this was part of Poli-Sci 410, the Politics of Public Opinion, which is a 10-week long version of what we're going to cover in 1 week in this class, the public opinion industry. This is an excerpt about 25 minutes or so from the very first framing lecture of that class. And then the subsequent lectures that I'm going to do for this week 2 of our course together are going to elaborate and develop on the mechanisms of the public opinion industry and what the public opinion industry does. So the first lecture is going to frame up what the public opinion industry is, how it connects clients and the public, and what its place in the political world is, and then we'll delve into each of the things, all of the mechanics of what it does. So without any further ado, I'm introducing myself, lecturing from January of 2020 from a college classroom, the audio tape, and then you'll see the lecture notes, which is really just a simple diagram come up right now. And what is public opinion? And that's not a simple singular thing, it's actually a multiple thing. So right away, like there's a complexity, it's something that sounds simple, right? Like we have all kinds of terms like this. The media. I think you all are aware of the fact that the media is not a thing, right? Corporations. There's not such a thing as corporations in a monolith. Public opinion is the same way. There are multiple facets to it, and it circulates in our political system in a variety of different ways. What I'm going to do in this class is focus our attention on the public opinion industry. And today, I'm going to lay out a model for how we're going to understand the way that the public opinion industry functions in our political system. Okay, so the public opinion industry. What is the public opinion industry? The public opinion industry is pollsters, researchers, media outlets, campaign strategists, and advertising and PR firms. Anybody that produces, disseminates, or makes use of public opinion measurements. And it's a pretty diverse industry. I'll read that list again. Pollsters and researchers, media outlets, campaign strategists, and advertising and PR firms. That's a relatively diverse set of people. If you're interested in going into the public opinion industry, you actually, you have a bunch of different avenues of work for you. But this is a pretty diverse, much like the media in general, or corporations, or politicians, right? There are a lot of different politicians who have different roles. Even elected officials, there's a lot of diversity. That's one thing to keep in mind, is that I'll talk about the public opinion industry in using that term, but I want you always to remember that it itself is a diverse and multifaceted thing. There are certain features of this industry that tie together these various individuals and companies and organizations that are involved in this. But just know that there is also not just one, like the public opinion industry isn't just Gallup. The public opinion industry isn't just Pew or whatever it is. Those are elements of it. On either side of the public opinion industry are the two sort of big connecting sets of people. One is, of course, the public. What would the public opinion industry be without the public? And the public is dual-sided in terms of the public opinion industry. The public is the subject of study, and the public is also the object of action. So there's a sort of a dual movement through the public opinion industry. One of them is that the purpose of the public opinion industry is to understand the public as a subject of study. The public is an entity that's out there. Now, it really should need to be said, but I will say, because I think it is important, that the public is clearly not this monolithic thing, right? And it is one of the weird things about democratic theory and the way we talk about nations and the way we talk about politics, that we talk about the people or the public, the will of the people, or public opinion, right? As though it were a thing. All of us have names, right? Aeneas, you're a thing. You're a unified individual. The public is not like that. Though even you and all of us are diverse. Right? I won't speak for you, Aeneas, but I'll speak for myself, and some of you may know this. I have multiple voices in my head, and not in a kind of a crazy stab you because a red dog told me to stab you kind of way, but just I have all kinds of different impulses. Just at the baseline, I have the things that my left brain are telling me, the rational executive function. I have the things that my sort of creative right brain are telling me. I have my emotions. I have actually learned, this is something I've learned recently, my body actually has a voice. It'll tell me, I never listened to my body before, now I'm like, oh, the body has a voice too. And then each of these actually, I think, has multiple voices. So even though we are much more unified, we're a specific thing, and we can say, okay, here's your biography, and here's your story, here's who you are, you're contained in a body. The public is obviously not like that, but we are actually an awful lot like the public in the sense that there are different voices, different impulses, different facets, different sides to you, different roles. So even a person with a name, Hannah, is a person with a name. You have how many roles? Are you a sister? Do you have any siblings?
Yeah.
You're a sister, you're definitely a daughter, you're a friend, you're a coworker, you're a student, are you in a relationship?
Yes.
You're in a relationship, so you have all these different roles, and so to understand, I can name you Hannah, just like I say, the public, but there's, even just without delving too far into you, there's that level of complexity. So keep that in mind. One of the things that's complicated about the public opinion industry is that the goal is to understand the public. And it is, in some ways, a completely incomprehensible concept. Just like it's impossible to know a person in their fullness, right? And you've taken a bunch of classes with me, and I've talked to you I feel like I know you pretty well, and some of you have taken classes with me, you might feel like you know me pretty well, and you might be right that you have a certain amount of knowledge. But it is even just getting to know a human being, it's a pretty gargantuan task in understanding what that person is about. The public is obviously an even more enormous thing. But that doesn't mean, just like with a person, no one will ever know anyone else to their complete fullness, right? I'm coming up on my 21st anniversary with my wife, and who do I know better than this woman? Except for my two kids, who I've known since the very moment of their birth, right? But I still, she's a mystery to me. She still says things that I'm just like, oh, really? Holy shit. I'm learning stuff about her all the time, which sounds like, well, does that mean I'm an inattentive person, a bad husband, not paying attention? No, it's just that every human being is a mystery. My kids, too, I know so much about them, and yet they're still a mystery to me. That doesn't mean that there isn't a way for me to know these people. And the same thing is true with knowing the public. So it's ultimately unknowable, much more diverse than it seems like, many components and facets to it, just like any individual human being. But that doesn't mean that we just say, well, this is bullshit. This can't be done, right? I can never know another person fully. It doesn't mean it's not worthwhile to try to figure them out, right? And that's definitely the case in any relationship. Certainly with my wife, it's even though I know there's nothing but 70 more years of mystery and me still when I'm 90 years old going, wow, really? that's true about you. That doesn't mean I'm not going to try, and it won't be beneficial to me to learn more and more about what makes this amazing and very diverse and complex and ever-changing woman tick. So I sometimes use the tools of the public opinion industry to try to understand my wife. So the reason why we're trying to understand, and there's an arrow and there's a blank space over here, is because this is the world or the domain of clients. These are the reason the public opinion industry exists. There's no such thing as an industry unless there's a clientele for that industry. The clients are also a kind of a diverse, multifaceted group. There are businesses, public officials, candidates, parties, interest groups, lobbyists. That's not a comprehensive list, but that's the big ones, particularly from our point of view. We're not going to care too much about how businesses make use of the public opinion industry in terms of doing their business, but many businesses actually do act as clients in the political realm as well, because, for example, if you're a company that pollutes or potentially pollutes, and there are government regulations that either exist that you would like to roll back, or there are government regulations that are being proposed, either through a regulatory agency or through a legislature, and you're against those. As a business, even just as doing business, you have to or will get involved in politics. And so it will be very beneficial to know what the public is thinking about this particular kind of pollution, about companies like you, about the regulatory efforts, about the way that you could actually resist those efforts without seeming like you're just a bunch of greedy, profit-mongering, earth-destroying, horrible people. So businesses while businesses make use of the public opinion industry in ways that we won't talk about in this class, mostly for marketing purposes to sell us stuff, they also are definitely involved in the political arena. And the dynamics are similar, right? There is a similarity between how you are marketed jeans and cars and soap and all kinds of other stuff to the way you're marketed policy and ideas. So that's important. So businesses are clients, but so it's not just politicians. It's everybody who's involved in politics. So the clients are everyone with a stake in political outcomes. Now, the clients will desire a different thing from the public opinion industry in terms of what its particular product is. If you're a candidate, you have an interest in finding out what does the public in your what is your potential voters in the election you're running in, what do they think? What's important to them? What will activate their anger? What will generate their loyalty? What are they willing to go to the mat to oppose? What are they willing to donate money to support? And that is a rich set of interests, or a rich set of data. It can get that detailed and that rich. Other clients might just want to know who's winning, right? So one of the things that's interesting is I mentioned that the public opinion industry includes media outlets. Clients also include media outlets. Media outlets do sort of are in both of these realms. If you want to be able to report on campaigns, you want to have a horse race, you want to have a score, you want to have the up-to-date poll, and you want to have it be pretty accurate. That's a very simple thing. Like the most common expression of public opinion that we see is horse race or approval rating type things, right? Donald Trump's approval rating or disapproval rating. The percentage of the likely Iowa caucus goers who are going to vote for Joe Biden or Elizabeth Warren or Bernie Sanders. These are the most familiar forms of understanding the subject of the public, but that is really, that just scratches the surface, and that is, in fact, pretty much the least useful information, and also the most blunt, right? You just ask people, who are you going to vote for? And even though there's a complexity to finding that out and being accurate about it and providing the data to your clients that will actually give them a clear picture so that they don't screw up, so they don't say, well, Hillary Clinton's definitely going to win the election, And then people are like, ooh, but Hillary Clinton didn't actually win the election, we counted all the votes. It has always been the case that the public opinion industry, in seeking to understand the public, has been attempting to generate better and better methods, and there are all kinds of difficulties in doing that. As an object of action, what the public opinion is intending to be used for clients is control. The clients are in this interesting dual relationship with the public, and for, I would say, lack of a better way of putting it, it's a master-slave kind of relationship. In the sense that the clients are seeking to be the master, right? The public is the object of their action. They're trying to control what people think, what they do. And mostly they want to control what people think so that they can control what they do, right? So the public will be acted upon. Why do you think businesses want to know how people feel about various kinds of pollution or about various kinds of regulation? Because they want to be able to act effectively to further their goals, right? So as the master, they have specific goals. Now, why do you think I say they're the slave, too? You know, if you're an elected official, you're a slave to public opinion because those people will either vote for you or against you, right? So whatever your goal is, you're attempting to manipulate or control the public. But you are subject to the public's view, and you're subject to voters, you're subject to protesters, you're subject to boycotts, right? Like the last thing you want, if you're a business and you decide to do something and you misread public opinion, like, no one gives a shit about this, and then suddenly one little story gets out, or some blogger does something, or there's a tweet storm, and now there's a boycott of your product. Like, fuck, that was, You're a slave, right? You are subject to the unpredictable, whimsical, irrational behavior of the public. Or you're subject to the rational, organized, passionate behavior of the public. So that's the reason why the public opinion industry exists and why it actually makes an awful lot of money and plays a really important role from the point of view of clients, is because they're seeking to be a master, but they're a slave to public opinion. Now, when you're a slave, you seek ways of increasing your freedom and decreasing your oppression. And that is exactly why the clients want to control the public, is because that decreases their oppression. Think about it. You're this poor, multi-billion-dollar pharmaceutical company just trying to make a profit like any other global entity. And people don't like it. People think that drugs are bad. Like, why do they think drugs are bad? Right? Drugs are good. Drugs make you happy. Drugs make you feel good. They cure diseases, right? Like, you're like, man, people think drugs are bad. Obviously, people think drugs are bad because there are certain people who are telling people that drugs are bad. So one of the things to keep in mind also and always, this is something I say in all of my politics classes because I think it cannot be overstated. It's really easy to think of things monolithically. But it's also really, even when you don't think of the clients monolithically, right? You're like, okay, there's a bunch of different businesses, there's public officials, there's lobbyists, there's interest groups, there's all kinds of entities that are potential clients for the public opinion industry. You also have to keep in mind that there is a huge level of competition to control the public. And for every entity or person or group that wants to manipulate the public in this direction, there is almost always some other entity that wants to manipulate the public in the opposite direction, or at least in some kind of different direction. And so it seems like, okay, God, these people are experts. They have top-flight research, they have really good graphic designers and writers, and they understand human psychology better and better because the field of social psychology is always improving. How does the public stand a chance in not just being completely controlled And why are we not just like utterly robots to these clients? Because we are subject to multiple directions, multiple influences of control. And a big part actually of what is going on through the public opinion industry is this kind of multi-front battle to control the public's mind. I mean, even in just a political campaign, this is the simplest and most kind of, two candidates, the most binary, simple example. The two candidates are trying to control the message about themselves. They're trying to get as many people as possible to say, I like you, or I like you. And obviously, there's not just one side doing it. One candidate's not like pouring on the messaging and trying to control people. The other's like, yeah, if the people like me, they'll vote for me. If not, I'm fine. Like if that's your attitude, if you're a potential client, if you're seeking to win to control the action of the public, and you have that kind of laissez-faire attitude, you're toast, right? You can't do that. You could do that 200 years ago. Right? It was considered back in Thomas Jefferson and John Adams and James Madison's day ungentlemanlike to campaign. Right? Like, well, I want to be president, but I can't want it too much, and I can't tell people I want it, and I definitely can't try to influence them because that's ungentlemanlike. That shit went out the window with Andrew Jackson. He was just like, fuck, of course, I'm going to try to control people. I'm going to buy them beer. I'm going to scare the crap out of them. I'm going to make all kinds of crazy promises that can conflict with each other that I couldn't possibly keep. Right? Andrew Jackson was the original Donald Trump. Better hair, right? Real tan from the frontier. But basically, he used all that same stuff, right? And he actually was competing in a world. The reason why Andrew Jackson was so successful is because he was competing in a world where he was doing a brand new thing. So ever since Andrew Jackson, politicians have been involved in this kind of active competition to control people's mind. So when people say, "Oh, politicians are just trying to manipulate the public," it's like, of course they're fucking trying to manipulate the public. What else would they be doing? Don't be an idiot. I'm not saying you guys are idiots. Okay, you guys are definitely not idiots. The public opinion industry has always made use of whatever cutting-edge technologies are available. At one point, the questionnaire was a cutting-edge technology, right? Like somebody was like, hey, you know what we can do? We can ask people questions, and we can write down what they say, and we can collect that up, and we can figure out what they're thinking. That was not done in the 19th century, right? That is a 20th century invention. That was a stupendous breakthrough technology. So this is the public opinion industry will always leverage whatever it can to do both of these things, to understand and to control. Right? It's one of the reasons why psychology became right around World War I became a really important subject of study for public officials, for PR people, for campaign strategists. Because if you can know what makes the human mind work, you can manipulate people much more easily. And that actually gives you both sides, right? It's like, oh, we can understand. Why is it that public opinion is so fickle? Because these are the features of human psychology. Well, that also then makes us able to more easily, gives us those insertion points to control what people think. This is the basic model of the relationship of the public opinion industry to the two sort of domains that are important to it: the people and the citizens. So the public is a subject and object, and the clients are a master and slave. So keep that in mind, because this dual movement, these two arrows in either direction, is really important. It's easy to think about public opinion as only one or the other of these, as an attempt to measure public sentiment. Or it's easy to think about the public opinion industry as just engaged in manipulation. These two things are intimately connected. Now, not everybody or every organization does both of these things, right? Pollsters don't necessarily themselves get involved in the business of figuring out, okay, here's what we're pretty sure people think, and here's what we need them to think, and here's what we can do to get them to this other place. Pollsters are in the understand business. And what they're doing is they then are turning over their information to people who are in the control business. Right? If you're a campaign strategist, you want the best polling data possible because you want to have the best strategy for getting the outcome that you desire, right? Campaign strategists actually, they don't read newspaper polls. They don't look at the poll in the Washington Post or whatever all the other ones that get quoted. I always forget all the organizations. They don't look at those polls and go, yeah, we're winning. That's good. Let's just keep doing the same thing we're doing. That would be idiotic, right? That would be the most sort of blunt, primitive way of devising a strategy of control. They want, first of all, they want not just who's winning and by how much. They want to know what kind of people are on their side, what the intensity of their support is, how movable they are either by their own side or by the other side. And they want to know what these different groups will respond to. So pollsters, people who run focus groups, they provide this kind of information. Now, focus groups is actually a place where both of these things happen. Focus groups are an attempt to, one, figure out what the public is thinking, and two, sort of trial run manipulation methods. One of the things about the public is, as a subject of study, the public, as I said, is diverse and changing. It's also hard to read. It's mysterious.